Hello, welcome back to the exOrion Quick Start Guide for your project assistant, your proof of concept. Uh, this tutorial is going to focus on the agenda, the automatic agenda tool. So before we actually create the agenda, I'm going to walk you through some of the important sections of this agenda. This is specifically designed for managing project progress tracking meetings where your team of project team members who are completing tasks would provide you updates on how their tasks are progressing or whether they've been completed. The design of this particular template has about 25 to 30 years of project experience built into it. So it operates very efficiently and it gets the team in and out of your meeting, provides them the information that they need, and gives you the information that you need to produce your status update. So first thing you notice up here is the client. Anything that's in blue can be changed. You add your client, maybe your company name, the name of your project, the time of your meeting, the other information here, place, room, conference ID. You can go ahead and add that, and you'll notice that that will automatically appear here in the status report. If I go ahead and change ABC company to let's call it DEF. It makes sense that the status update has the same information on it. You don't have to duplicate that. The invitees, this section here is automatically populated when we create the agenda, and you'll see that in a moment, based on the tasks that appear down here and the presenters that need to be in the room. We don't always have to have all the project team members from name 1 to name 20 in the room. For this week, we only need these 6 people. Of course, the CC list, of course, has everybody that you have added to your key contact list, because this is your way of making certain that all your stakeholders are aware of what your agenda is. They may want to join and listen in or add some value. The start time, 10:30. You'll notice that the first item, the high priority items, begins at 10:35. Important, I leave a 5-minute grace period. It gives people a chance to make it from their last meeting. They tend to generally appreciate that and usually tend to respect your 5-minute window. High priority items. This is what some project managers would call the elephant in the room. These are the tasks, obviously they're red, that you want to get updates on first. Red means they're on the critical path, which means they are driving your end date. They're pushing your end date out for your delivery of your project. So what you're seeing here is a task name. This number is the number that's identified as the ID number on Microsoft Project, and this is the finish date for the task. So if this were misspelled, or if there was something about this task you needed to change in your project plan, you know it's number 4. This is the name of the person who's assigned to that task in your Microsoft Project plan. So we're looking for an update from name number 1 on whether they created the draft of the business requirements and whether they did it by June 11th, 2014. The bolded items are milestones, and they always say milestone. This is key when we get to the milestone part. Of course, any tasks that are in black are they may be behind schedule, but they're not affecting the critical path quite yet. Name 3 knows that they have a number of tasks here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tasks here. I would leave, if I was number 3, this one as my last task. And I would take care of the other ones first, the ones that are most crucial as far as timeline goes. About 10 minutes usually to get through that, and believe it or not, you can get through this in 10 minutes. Keep it quick. Is it done yet? If you need any help, let me know and move on to the next item. It keeps the meeting moving, and people tend to appreciate that. Overview of project progress. Now, because a lot of this agenda is sort of pre-designed for you based on the window of time that you've identified here. In other words, it's going to go back 8 days and to get updates. We'll change it to 7. And it's going to look forward another week for the 1-week outlook, which we're about to look at. So a lot of this information is pulled using that criteria from your project plan. This area here, overview of project progress, project plan review, is where you can add sort of free-form discussion topics. Discuss the marketing plan, review the production process, Of course, you can add the people that need to be part of that conversation. That's key. And of course, if you do that, you do this, of course, after you've created your agenda. So make certain those names are also over here. They know they're invited, and they need to be there. Upcoming milestones. So over the course of the next week, these are the next 3 milestones that are going to occur. It's good for people to know what's coming up next week if it's a big week. That's about a 15-minute time frame. Sometimes it drags on a little longer. However, you can change your time here. So this is not the prettiest, but then again, this is proof of concept. So let's say we change this to 35 minutes later. So from 10:45 to 11:05, you have time to discuss these discussion topics. These tasks are other tasks that are due, but they are not as critical as far as timeline goes. So Name 3 has a lot of work to do, but Name 3 has some slack on these tasks here. He or she really needs to focus on getting these done. This provides a lot of information to them in a very simple view that you create automatically. Incidentally, if you had to create this by hand, picking the tasks out, the names, which you likely wouldn't do, I did it for about a year and realized that although I was getting the results I wanted and the behavior I wanted for my team, it took about 4 hours to create this agenda manually. So decided that it might be easier to automate the process. Now, the progress of action items. There are, of course, there's an action log. We'll have another tutorial on that one later. And there are certain action items, numbers 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, who have target or due dates that fall within my window in the past. And so I need updates specifically on action item number 8 from name 8, just coincidentally number 10 from name 10, number 11 from name 11. This is just coincidentally, of course. And number 12 from name 12, and 13 and 14 is missing. There's nobody assigned to those action items. So you notice right away that there's a problem with your action log. You need to go and take a look at number 13 and 14 to assign somebody to them, or else they're not going to get done. Now, the purpose behind this is I'm sure you've seen project meetings where the action log comes out and the project manager starts at number 1 and works their way down to 500, and then people leave the meeting an hour and a half later, and they tend to stop coming. All you really need to get out of that meeting are the action items that are due for that meeting. That way, people can prepare for those action items. They can come in prepared to give you updates that you can capture in your log, and they leave. People tend to appreciate that, and of course, the amount of work you'd have to go into to figure out which ones are due and who owns them would take a lot of time to do, which is why most project managers wouldn't do that. This is an important section here. This is called the 1 week outlook. Red, of course, equals critical path. Bold equals milestone. We know that already. And this shows your team what needs to occur between the meeting this week and the meeting next week. Who's on deck? Who needs to get these different tasks done? When they're due. There are certain ones, of course, that again are not critical path. We know all about that. And this gives them a fairly good idea. These are some generic tasks here of what they need to do now. Once you go back to your project plan and add your updates that you've captured on these tasks here, the dates may shift a little bit. So when you produce your status report, the 1 week outlook is likely going to look a little bit different. Going into the agenda, this is what it looked like. So people begin to prepare. They begin to think about, okay, how am I going to plan my week next week? Once you send the status report out, it gives them more concrete information in terms of what's due next week from them. Lastly, this is a very important part here. Oftentimes in a discussion throughout the meeting, usually in this section right here, where we have the discussion topics, the need for breakout meetings where more detail needs to be discussed needs to happen. In a good tracking meeting, you don't want to have that conversation there. You want to make certain you identify what it is, what it's about, the individuals who need to be involved, and make a note down here that we need to have a obviously this was taking a little bit longer than perhaps you'd anticipated. So we're making a note here that there needs to be an offline meeting or conversation for the marketing meeting. What I typically do is this finds its way back on my agenda next week right here, so I can see what was the outcome of that meeting. Okay, now that I showed you all that, of course, and there's the adjourn, I try as much as possible to keep to that. In fact, the 1 week outlook, I don't usually spend a whole lot of time looking at this in terms of walking people through it. They can read, I don't need to read it to them unless there's something specifically I want to focus on. If I need to make up time in my meeting that I may have run long on certain items, I've got a good 10 minutes right here that I can utilize. So it helps me to manage my time. Okay, let's go ahead and automatically create the agenda. Now this is a proof of concept, so it runs a little slower. The good news is that you can sit back with your arms folded. You can go on to work on something else on your laptop, your workstation. You can go get a coffee, take a break. Sometimes when the project plan is a smaller project plan, this part's fairly quick, but I think I have a pretty large project plan in here. The good news is it's putting it together for you. Now, one thing I'd also recommend is before you send your agenda out, take a good read through. Make sure as you look at the tasks that, based on your knowledge of where you are in the life cycle of your project, that what's on the agenda makes sense. You may see some things that you may think that, wait a minute, those don't belong here. Those aren't due for another 3 months. Going through the agenda allows you to audit your own project plan and alerts you to where there may be some tweaks that you need to make to your plan, where tasks may be misleading people, and at least you're able to catch it before they do. So I would highly recommend that you take a look at your agenda before you send it out. You may want to go back to your project plan, make the tweaks, come back, and of course hand the project plan back to your assistant and recreate your agenda. Usually at the beginning of a project you run that scenario a few times. By the time you get about halfway through the project, you find that there are fewer and fewer instances of that occurring. And there you go. There is your agenda.